welcome to Fiddle Up. My name is Emerald Ray, and I've been playing the fiddle for 3 decades now. Don't tell anyone, but I am going to share all of my secrets here with you. And so let's get started, shall we? This is a fiddle. Let's start off with the most frequently asked question of all time. What is the difference between a violin and a fiddle? Let's just start right at the beginning. And so the short answer is, this is a violin. It's also a fiddle. They're technically the same instrument. If you see a fiddle player and a violin player, they look the same, they sound the same, it's the same thing. The fiddle is sort of a really old nickname for folk instruments. And it comes from the Celtic tradition, actually. So when you see somebody who's playing Celtic music, bluegrass, old time, something like that, that's a folk music, they're generally going to be calling their violin a fiddle. And that comes from, you know, there used to be fiddles that people would make at home. There's different kinds of, you know, sort of older, more homemade instruments. But this is a violin that comes from the 1500s, roughly. They were made in France and Italy, and this became what everybody played fiddle music on in Europe, and then therefore in America when everybody came over. So same thing. And you know, there's different language, you know, in different languages they'll call their fiddles violins, and it's a little bit interchangeable. But if you have somebody who's playing classical music, jazz, that kind of thing, rock music, they're generally going to call it a violin. If you have somebody who's playing folk music, they're going to call it a fiddle. But, you know, there have been famous classical players who've also called their violins a fiddle, so it's completely interchangeable. So there's that question answered. So getting started with this course, if you're starting completely from scratch, and you know, you are just starting from nowhere at all, the first thing you're going to want to do is get a hold of a fiddle. If you already have a hold of a fiddle, that's awesome. And keep watching this video so you can see more of the details of what you need to have with it. But the first thing you want to do is find an instrument. So you can find an instrument in a shop. You can buy one from a player that you know. I would just have a look around. I've known a lot of people that have had a lot of success with things like eBay and flea markets. You wouldn't believe. You don't have to spend a gazillion dollars on a violin to get a decent instrument. This fiddle was originally bought when I was very young for $600, and I've had a ton of work done on it, and it sounds awesome, and it's now worth way more than that. But there's lots of different ways to skin a cat, and especially when you're first getting started, you don't want to break the bank or take out a second mortgage for a fiddle. That is completely not necessary. If you have tons of cash and it doesn't matter, I would highly recommend finding a luthier who's you know, still currently working. A young luthier is always great. So a young maker that you want to support, that's always a wonderful thing to do. So yeah, if you have 10, 20 grand to drop on that, go for it. If you don't, it's okay. And something I would also highly recommend you think about is renting. Renting is a really wonderful way of testing out the instrument without making the purchase. And you can just pay a small amount per month and you can have a decent instrument. And they'll take care of all the maintenance and all that kind of thing for you. So that is acquiring the instrument. The second thing you want to do is to find yourself a luthier. Find yourself a violin maker or a repair person who can help you with the maintenance, because you're going to have to go in once or twice a year at least and get something done. You know, there's things like, you know, resetting the sound post, which is a little post that's on the inside, getting the strings changed if you're uncomfortable doing that, and just somebody to keep an eye on. It's like your fiddle doctor, you know. You want to need somebody to keep an eye on what's going on with the instrument, especially if you're just getting started and you don't even know how to do very basic things on your own. You want to make sure you have somebody there who you can check in with about that. So let's go over the instrument itself. So we'll start at the top. This up here is called the scroll. As you can see, it has a scroll shape at the top, and it's just decorative. It just looks lovely. Sometimes you'll see people who have like a different shape at the top. Sometimes you'll see a horse head or a bearded man or something like that. That's very rare, but it's very cool to see those when you see them. But it's still called the scroll. It'll just be carved in some, you know, some kind of artsy shape. These are the pegs. We use these to tune. We use these to do our macro tuning. And these are your fine tuners, which we do the fine tuning. They're actually called fine tuners, so that's self-explanatory. This is the peg box right here. And this is where the pegs kind of go in and hold the end of the string. The end of the string is coiled onto the pegs up here. This little piece right here is called the nut, and that's what holds up the strings before they hit the fingerboard, so they're hovering above the fingerboard, so that when you put your finger down on the fingerboard and depress the string, it has somewhere to go. This right here is called the neck, and as you can see, it comes back just slightly, so you get a nice angle here coming down. And this is the fingerboard right here. This is generally a piece of ebony, or some other kind of hardwood, but generally they're ebony, and that's why they're so dark and black. And this is the body here. This is the ribbing along the side. We generally refer to the back as the back, and this top as the top. So this is the top and the back. Sometimes you will see that instruments will have a single piece back, and sometimes they have a two-piece back. Mine happens to be a two-piece. Single piece backs are sometimes considered more valuable, but not always. So continuing along, we have the strings. There are 4 strings. Starting from the bottom, there's G, D, A, and E. So they're tuned in fifths. And that is so because you have 4 fingers on this side. So it makes it so you can use your 4th fingers and go up and down the strings, and everything's all very comfortably and ergonomically designed. So continuing along, we have your F holes right here. These are just the sound holes. These are where the sound comes out. The strings connect with the bridge, which is right here, and send the vibrations through the bridge down to the top. And the top is connected to the back by a sound post, which you can't see here, but it sits right here. And it's a tiny little piece of wood that connects the top and the back. So that's how the vibrations travel through to the back. And then the whole instrument resonates and sends the sound out of these sound holes here. So you might see, you'll see the F holes that are on a violin or a viola or a cello, or a contrabass. You'll see them on other instruments. You know, it's the same as the hole in the middle of the guitar. It's just where the air flow comes out and the sound comes out. So continuing on down, we have the fine tuners, as I mentioned before. If you're getting a new instrument, you might not have these on your instrument. I would highly recommend you get some. Sometimes they have tail pieces, just like this is a tail piece here. And sometimes you have a tail piece that has the fine tuners built in. I would highly recommend that for the beginning, and I would highly recommend it for anyone, really. I'm a professional, and I find that I can't really get through a gig without using my fine tuners. They're just too easy to just tweak. They add a little weight to the instrument, but honestly, ease of tuning is really important. So this is the tail piece here. This is what holds the, suspends the strings up, and then they're connected at the bottom here. And so you will notice that my fiddle is a little bit special. It's got some mother of pearl inlay on the pegs and on the tail piece here. This fiddle is a German factory model that was originally sold in the Sears and Roebuck's catalog. It's from around the year 1890, 1900. And so this type of very intricate inlay was really only in style around that time. So I'm very lucky to have it. It's very cool. And yeah, I've had lots of people tell me I should take it off because it's too, it's too heavy on the instrument, but I won't. That's not my job. They've been on the fiddle for 120 years. I'm not touching it. So I consider myself to be the keeper of this fiddle, and it will live on beyond me. So that's just a philosophy thing. So here we have the chin rest. This is where your chin is going to sit in here so you can hold the fiddle up. So mine is on the side. Sometimes you'll see them in the middle too, but this is just a style that I like in particular. It's all based on your comfort. All of this stuff that you see right here is my pickup system. So just ignore that if you're getting started out and you don't want to worry about microphones quite yet. You don't need to know about that right now, but just in case you're interested, this is a lavalier microphone that will, pick up just like a normal condenser microphone. And then this is a pickup right here. So if I want to go totally electric, which I do often, I can do that. So, and it's all, the jack is right tucked under here, underneath the chin rest. So it's all very neat and handy. And then on the reverse side, I have a shoulder rest, which you're going to need. So we'll talk about all the paraphernalia now. You're going to need some kind of shoulder rest. You know, some people say these are optional, but unless you have a really short neck, there are some people who have just a really short neck and a chest that comes out like this. You know, if you have no space here, then it's okay to not use a shoulder rest. But everyone else, you need one of these. I will say, especially for women, because women anatomically seem to have longer necks for some reason, and need to have something like this. So this is going to be a support underneath the fiddle to hold it up exactly where it needs to go. So you're going to get something like this. This is an Everest. I also have another one here. These are ones I use on stage. This is a Bon Musica, and this one is highly adjustable. And as you can see, it has a really strong shoulder hook. That's why I really like it. See how big that hook is? This is why I like to wear it on stage, because I tend to move around quite a bit. So, but this is what I use for every day. This is very comfortable. And something like a coon rest, or, you know, anything that's just, you know, $25 and you know, you can just give it a try. That's a good way to go. So what you do with it is you take the thick end. See, it's got a thick end and a thin end. You're gonna hold the fiddle out like this, and you put the thick end at the top, and the thick end is gonna go on the top of your shoulder, like so. And it holds it up. Can you see it? It just gives it a little bit of a boost here. And then I can just gently put my chin and put my arm, and it's just, you know, nice to have it down there. They have all different styles of chin rest. I would just take into account, you know, the space that you have to fill. So other stuff that you're gonna need would be a bow. So this is one of my bows. I'm a big carbon fiber fan, even though like there's lots of beautiful wood bows. I travel a lot and things happen, and I drop my bows on stage and things like that, and I just feel more comfortable having a plastic bow. So, and they sound really good. You know, they sound pretty good for what they are. I also like a really light bow, so that's why I like these. But any wood bow that you love, or a carbon fiber bow, I would just, you know, try both, see what you like. There's differences between the two. The wood bows tend to shrink and contract with the humidity more. So yeah, carbon fiber is a good starter bow. It's also a good road bow. So that's what I tend to use. And as you can see, it's got some hair here. I use black bow hair, which is highly unusual. It's not something that everybody does. It's not something I would recommend just starting out. Black bow hair is technically contrabass bow hair. And I just really like that extra sandpapery feel, but that is not for everyone. So just to explain that, that's what we got going on here. It's the most frequently asked question I get. So in your fiddle case, when you get a fiddle, other things that you're gonna need are gonna include some rosin. I like jade rosin, but you can pick up any rosin. You don't need to spend a gazillion dollars on rosin. The cheap stuff is fine, especially in the beginning. And we'll go over that a little bit more later. You'll find that there's probably a chin rest key in the case. It's generally going to be like just a little thing, but I have this really cool one that's shaped like made out of an old peg. So as you can see, the key is at the top here, and you use that to turn these little things in the back so you can get your chin rest on and off. Just so you know what that is. Another thing that might be in your case that always confuses people, peg dope, which looks like a little brown lipstick. And this, you're basically never gonna use this, but it used to be very standard. They also have peg drops now. But what this is a little bit of stickiness for your pegs. When you're changing your strings, sometimes maybe you will swipe a little bit of this on, but generally if you put it on, it's good for years. and then you're left with the rest of the tube to just hang out in your case. So if you see this brown lipstick hanging around, I just had to mention that. Other things you will need is some strings. So I am a Diodario lover. I love Diodario strings. I've been using them for a really long time. I would highly recommend, if you're just getting started out, using helicore strings. They are awesome. They're about 40 bucks and they last forever. They break in really easily. They're an amazing starter string. I now use their Kaplan series, which are a synthetic core string. So they have a little bit of a shorter lifespan, but they sound really beautiful. So that's what I've been using these days. Another thing you're going to need is some kind of a tuner. You can use an app. You can use one of those little clip-on things. You can use a tuning fork. There are all kinds of different tuning options, but something that's going to help you get the sound is going to help. So we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. And you're going to need a case for your instrument. So when you're looking for a case, I would be mindful of the fractions. So this is a full-size instrument, and so this is called a 4/4 instrument. If you see that 4/4, 3/4, half size, all of those fractions are of the full-size instrument. So if you're an adult or an adult-sized child, then you should stick with the full-size instrument. If you have a child, or if you are a child starting out, what you do is you would go to a rental place or a violin shop, and they would size you. And how they do that is they put the scroll in the palm of your hand. So if you're reaching out your little arm and it reaches about so far, then that means that instrument is good for you. And then once you get big, then you've fully grown into the instrument. But they will help you with all that. So that's a whole bunch of information. I hope that was helpful, and we're gonna roll along here, and I hope you enjoyed the series. Thank you so much for joining me.